Today I am going to be presenting my presentation on communication accommodation theory. So how do we alter our behavior when talking to certain people? Communication accommodation theory addresses this. Here's the definition. Communication accommodation theory emphasizes the adjustments that people make while communicating with others. Howard Giles, the man who developed the theory, defined it as when people try to emphasize or minimize the social differences between themselves and the people they interact with. People will accommodate their communication activities to get approval and set a positive image in front of the interactant other person or the other person with whom they are interacting. People will also accommodate their communication styles to separate themselves from the other person, often to declare superiority. There are many related socio-psychological theories. Similarity, attraction theory, which is that human beings are attracted to one another based on appearance, proximity, similarity, and rewards. Social exchange process theory, which is that social behavior is the result of an exchange process. Causal attribution process theory, which is the retrospective explanation of outcomes of behavior due to internal factors such as effort or ability, and external factors such as difficulty and luck. Intergroup distinctiveness theory covers the differences between members of a similar social group. There are two types of accommodation. Convergence is the process in which people tend to adapt to the other person's communication characteristics to reduce the social differences. This occurs when a person desires to fit in with another person/group and match their communication style. Divergence is when the individual emphasis is on the social differences and nonverbal differences between the two parties. This is when a person wants to point out their differences from the other party, such as in a debate or when expressing a contradictory viewpoint. Now, there are four major assumptions with communication accommodation theory. While communicating, there will be similarity and difference in speech and behavior. The characteristics that people exhibit are based on our experiences and the cultural backgrounds that they grew up in. A conversation is evaluated by understanding the perception of the speech and behavior of the other person. Through evaluation, people decide to accommodate and fit in. The social status and belonging is determined by language and behaviors. While people communicate, they tend to accommodate the behaviors of those who are in higher social status than them. Norms guide the accommodation process. Norms define the behaviors of people, and people are in turn expected to act accordingly. Okay, example number one of communication accommodation theory. When a junior employee speaks with a higher level employee, both people tend to accommodate one another due to their difference in social status and ranking. The junior employee will talk in a respectful manner, and the senior employee will in turn accept the respect to make the junior employee comfortable. The junior employee is using convergence as they are attempting to match the communication style of the higher ranking employee, while the higher ranking employee is using divergence because he wants to separate himself from the junior ranking employee, possibly due to the difference in rank between the two. Example number two, a college professor uses big words in order to display their intelligence and belittle an audience. They use this as a means to showcase intellectual superiority. Through so, the professor is taking place in divergence. This is common for intergenerational encounters and encounters between people of different social status, as once again, they are trying to separate themselves from the person of lower status through the process of divergence. Example number three, one person hangs out around a group of young adults or teenagers and adjusts the way they speak to include more phrases and colloquialisms. This person is using convergence in order to appeal to the group and fit in more. In situations where a person wants to fit in with the group, they will often utilize convergence. Communication accommodation theory describes the human tendency to adjust their behavior while interacting. This affects people's daily lives as they alter their communication style depending on the environment and the interaction. In situations where the individual aims to gain acceptance from another person/group, they utilize convergence. In a situation where the individual aims to distance themselves from a person/group or declare superiority, they utilize divergence. Conclusion: the adjustments people make during conversations can alter the communication process entirely. They can choose to utilize the convergence method and in turn emphasize the similarities between themselves and the other person and be accepted by a person/social group. They can also choose to utilize the divergence method and emphasize the differences between themselves and the other person, possibly due to a feeling of superiority. The method of communication that the person decides to utilize is heavily dependent on the person with whom they are communicating. Here's the works cited.